Yeah, so before I wrote that piece, submitted it to the newsletter, there was quite a few people who were retired technical people and were very, very careful about what I wrote. And they passed it through a few times and wanted me to simplify it a few times. So this presentation slide, these slides the background information that led up to this, I suppose, distilled information that I put into that newsletter, which essentially I try to get a response from people in my local area so that if they had problems with their eyes or visual issues that were exacerbated by LED lights and had some medical backing for that, they would come to me, talk to me, and we could get something going with the council, because historically, that's how people have managed to push back. And LED lights are something that everyone can understand. They feel it, they see it. It's very apparent. So it's an easier thing to push back on. And en route to this, I spoke to the chief lighting engineer of my council and 3 councillors and the MP. And this might be a familiar story to people listening, but when it came to the crunch, they melted away. They were showing very willing. They saw that there were votes in it even, because I did a poll on the issue where if they wanted to take part in a scheme where one street had various kinds of LED lights and people could walk, drive, cycle through that road with a different kind of LED lights, including the baseline LED light, which is what we've all got in most of our localities, and see which they prefer, and then feed that back to the council, and based on that vote, get the LED light of the light quality they find most appealing. Okay, so leading up to that, I try to find out what the council's position is, why they chose the LED lights they did, because I found that they weren't very pleasant. Only a few lights were the old type in my area, and it had a much better feel to them. I looked into LED lights and the pros and cons, and there were a lot of things to be concerned about. For instance, what they called as a neutral white light source was quite cold in its color temperature, as they call it, 4,000 kelvins, which is common for most places. And it wasn't a very pleasant light, and I don't think it had the quality of light that enabled comfortable pass-through. It had an effect of strobing because it was focused light. So you go into patches of light and then patches of darkness. It wasn't diffuse light. So it was quite difficult for the brain to process, and added a layer of confusion, especially for the elderly, where the pupils don't adjust as quickly to the different light conditions. Okay, what they said was, this is the preference. Now, that was interesting, they used the word preference because we weren't asked for our preference. And Ian has talked about gunning principles before, and we weren't consulted on this. Neither were we told when these light bulbs would be changed to this kind of temperature of LED. They said it was the most efficient light for energy saving. And I looked into this, and LED lights aren't the most efficient. There are other kinds of lights that are more efficient. High pressure sodium lights are more energy efficient, in fact. But that's not to say, I'm going to say I don't want LEDs, whatever. I just think I want better LEDs, and I don't think they've done the right thing here. If they do put in sodium lights, well, that's fine. Okay, they say it's incisive in the dark. In a way, it's true. You can see more color with LED lights, but because it's not spread properly, and because of the way it's been done, it actually requires more processing in the brain, and it puts a stress load on you when you're driving, and that actually causes accidents a lot of the time. Neutral white light also has a good color contrast, okay, which is good for drivers and pedestrians. I've mentioned that point. Directionality of LED coupled with the array of lenses allows light to be very well controlled. Well, this is where I again say what they're saying, which is a good thing. The way they've done it is in fact a bad thing. Okay, we don't want directionality. We want even spread and not some drop off in light. One good thing they do, I don't know if this is what happens in your areas, they dim the lights. And so I felt, okay, that's fair enough. I'm glad they do that at certain times of the night, 25% from 8 to 11 p.m., followed by 50%. So my other concern was about blue light, and they say it's directed towards the road surface, so retinal impact is minimal. I think that was a bit of a cop out, because you can't help but see those lights at a distance. They say you don't look at those lights directly, but you do end up looking at them directly, depending on your perspective of where you are as you walk along a street. And what should be more concerning, see, this is whataboutery, really. This is what they say, don't look at this, don't think about this. What's more concerning is the headlights of cars, mobile phone tablets and laptops and televisions. Well, we're paying, we're forced to see these LED lights. We haven't got a choice. We can choose to put our mobile phones into a nighttime mode and have a warmer screen light. And similarly with our laptops. And we don't have a choice when private motorists have these LED headlights, which are now becoming more and more a cause for problem. RAC also talk about this, and it's a concern. So I think it's this point, look over there, not look over here. So this point again, that the lights aren't properly spread, the zebra effect that I mentioned before, sudden drop off in light. So this is what I spoke about in response to what they were saying. So we want spread light, not focus light, so it drops off suddenly. And we want these things to have the technology to spread the light better, so it's not, so it's adapted. LEDs tend to focus light the way they are, so it needs more work done, more diffusers separately added on to make them work in a way that helps us to see more clearly. So despite them saying, well, it costs less, there's more work to be done as well. I mean, it may well be the case that in real terms it costs less to use LEDs, but I think that if they need to do it in such a way that it's safe, and they don't have to, so value for money should not be overtake. It's a fitness for purpose. And this is a diagram showing how the LED lights are on the far right. They are focused in the middle, and then they are very weak as they go along. And even then, the light pattern is narrow. So we want more uniform illumination. Directed uniform illumination is better, because we don't want street lights spread so far that it spreads onto private property either. So, there has to be an in-between situation. Okay, so my other question was, they said it's very energy efficient, and that's what a neutral white light, 4,000 kelvins, a cold white light. So I said, well, how much less energy efficient would it be for LED lights to have more yellow phosphors to make the light warmer? They already use phosphors to make lights that appear white that would appear very blue. So yet the quality is harsh. So why not add more? So we want more information. I have looked into it, and it does add more energy cost, but not so much. And again, we're looking at fitness for purpose and what people can comfortably experience. Okay, and this is what the Chief Medical Officer said in 2017. Local authorities have been replacing mercury and sodium street lights with LEDs. If this is done purely on the basis of energy efficiency and cost, it is possible to end up with installations that may not be fit for purpose. So highlighting what I was saying earlier. And this is the canard about energy efficiency, LED being the most efficient. Low pressure sodium. So here at the bottom, you might not be able to read it. Is able to produce 118 lumens of light per watt. So the output per watt is greater than the blue-white LEDs that we have. So 180 for low pressure sodium compared to blue-white LEDs, which is 80 to 120 lumens, which is similar to high pressure sodium lights, 80 to 20 lumens per watt. Amber LED is 60 to 110 lumens per watt, so not that different compared to the blue and white LEDs. So that argument falls over when they say, well, amber LEDs are very much more energy consuming. Okay, so have a look at this photo. This was taken down this one street at the same time, and I try to keep a similar perspective angle of photograph. Not exactly the same, but the best I could manage. And one is high pressure sodium, and one is an LED. So on the same street, there's two types. And this is, I think, I don't know which, you can probably guess which one is the high pressure sodium and which is the LED. The one that is LED is on the left. The one on the right is high pressure sodium. So judge for yourselves which you think is more pleasant. Okay, so I mentioned how light in LEDs, because it's a flat surface emitter diode, it just goes in one particular direction, and additional ones go in more directions of light. Okay, 2000, this is an indication of color temperature. 2700K is very popular when people are faced with different lights and they are given a choice. They often prefer 2700 kelvins, which is warmer. Okay, so it doesn't have to be this way. Despite them saying this is the best way possible, some other councils say, well, no, it isn't. Suffolk County Council used warmer hued lights and phased out its old bulbs in 2021. They had a wait and see policy. They didn't jump for LED straight away. They wanted to let the technology mature before they went ahead. And then they rolled out the energy efficient street lighting. They had warmer lights. So they had, I think they had 2,700 or 3,000 kelvins. In the US, this is what inspired me. They did a survey in a city called Golden in LA, where they had a selection of LED lights with a spread of 5 color temperatures installed. And they asked the public which they preferred. Quite a sensible approach. And the public chose the LED at 2,700 kelvins, one of the warmer lights. It was described as a clear favorite among the 5, with 40% of the votes out of all of them. So yes, I agreed with the point with the LED lights in cars and scooters with the lighting engineer, chief of lighting engineering. And I'd mentioned that we have a choice with a lot of these things, but we don't with our street lights, despite paying for them. And we want the choice, just like other places have given people a choice. Okay. The engineer noted that the benefit of reduced glare, but in fact, with these LED lights, in fact, it increases glare, to be honest, because it's such focused light. And glare is basically when being dazzled, when your retina is struggling to process the image because of it's dealing with too much light. French government report published in 2013 that a luminance level higher than 10,000 CD meters squared causes visual discomfort, whatever the position of lighting in the field of vision. So, okay, so LEDs have a tendency to produce more glare, and because they're it's highly concentrated light, and it can be much higher than the discomfort level. This disability level and discomfort level, it's actually a technical term. Discomfort level, they say, is something that's subjective, but I wonder whether it is, because you can measure it in the brain, in brain activity. Disabling is where you can measure it in the eye, where it's you can see the effect of dazzle within how the eye is behaving when you see from the inside. Okay, this is a problem that's been flagged out by Public Health England, now UK HSA, to say that to reduce costs, some councils specify very small luminaires, typically 16 LEDs, at high drive currents, which causes more likely to cause flicker, which inevitably results in high luminance and glare. Glare could be reduced, for example, by specifying 24 instead of 16 LEDs luminaire at lower drive current to achieve the same output. So it'd be good. It's a specific question we can ask our councils, this particular point. So what I'm trying to impress upon you is that we are often told in very, very authoritative ways the wrong information, and we can push back simply with certain points. Yes, the letter said, the item in the newsletter said that street lights in Merton emit a cold bluish white light, raising concerns about their effects on health, safety, and the environment. Key issues include disruption of circadian rhythms in humans, animals, and plants, the zebra effect, where focused light causes sudden vision changes for pedestrians and drivers, and flicker rates that can adversely affect visual processing, and glare. Glare could be reduced, for example, by specifying 24 instead of 16 LEDs luminaire at lower drive current to achieve the same output. So it'd be good. It's a specific question we can ask our councils, this particular point. So what I'm trying to impress upon you is that we are often told in very, very authoritative ways the wrong information, and we can push back simply with certain points. Yes, so I mentioned the flicker because how that occurs is because you're putting in high voltage alternate current and then stepping it down into DC current. And if it's not done properly, it tends to strobe because of energy of current modulation, the current not being passed through in a steady way. And you can check this strobing by just putting a camera, your phone camera or any digital camera, video camera to the lights. And if you see it flickering, then you know the lights have not been implemented properly and not to the standard they should be. So we want to select the most effective lighting frequency for optimal visual processing and minimal biological effects. It's a key decision. Again, this is a quote from the Chief Medical Officer in the 2017 annual report. So circuitry within LED converts mains altering current to the low voltage direct current required by the LED. Unfortunately, some circuitry is adequate in reducing the variation, so this causes flicker. And it's very easy to get rid of this flicker. There's no reason why it can't be. So they can't use that excuse, oh, it's too much cost. And it's normal, every light flickers. That's not the case. The Swedish government has calculated the cost of eliminating flicker is equivalent to around 10 pence per LED unit. Now here's a source there at the bottom. Okay, flicker can disrupt the movement and control of the eyes and force the brain to work harder, stresses the nervous system, and rapid changes in light subconsciously activates the alarm system and have different effects on people depending on the frequency. So that leads to anxiety, stress, and people feel. So you do feel, this is the thing about lights, you do feel something uncomfortable, bad when the lights are not, and you don't know why sometimes, when the lights are not properly implemented. So this is why I want to specify. I'm in touch with scientists here and in the US to help me put this experiment together, which people can then vote on which lights have. So we specify particular lights and particular diffusers on those lights. And so see how people feel and how comfortable they are moving through the environment. Because what's happening, they reduce effectiveness to these things. Whiter light means peripheral vision's improved. And that's true because we've got rods and cones in our lights. Rods work more in the dark and they work better and they show more peripheral views. And so this is what councils and people rely on to say, well, LEDs at cold white lights enable you to see this and you can see more color. That is also true. It's unclear if it's very focused light and then suddenly drop offs, it's pointless because you're struggling all the same, your brain's processing harder, it's working harder to see the picture. And it's this sort of level of thought that's not gone into these other points that they don't look at. And then add to that flicker and add to that, they call it mesotopic vision, where you don't want to have your circadian rhythm disrupted while you're driving. It adds another stress. You want to feel that you're in nighttime, but not real dark night, kind of a dusk sort of feeling. And that's mesotopic vision. So you want a warmer hue, and that's a better, less stressful compromise for the brain. So sorry to bring those terms in, but sometimes I find that you've got to use a few of these terms just to show people that you're not, it's in a way, it pushes back harder with the officials working in councils, these decision makers, because they feel that they can walk over you otherwise, that you don't know your stuff. And they try and blind you with their science, which they puff up more than they don't produce as much content as they want you to feel they are. Okay. Another reason is that the older people aren't able to adjust their pupils to deal with flicker and with darkness, pools of light that fade into darkness very quickly. So that's why many people don't choose to drive at night now. And it's exacerbated by the LED headlights, of course. LED lights, circadian rhythm I mentioned, and it is important because it suppresses something called melatonin, and that has a lot of knock-on effects: cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and circulation issues, and cardiovascular issues. So at night, 5 times more effective at suppressing melatonin. This is not controversial. This is understood now. So you can say this with confidence. It's 5 times more effective at suppressing melatonin. Right, insufficient light during the day and excessive light exposure during the evening at nighttime hours disrupts the circadian rhythm and may cause immunity problems, cause impaired sleep, and mood problems, risks of obesity, diabetes, and neuroendocrine sensitive cancers, and other things. So lots of different effects. The thing is, with many LED lights, they have a spike in the wavelength that most effectively suppresses melatonin. And this spike happens at the blue wavelength. And the American Medical Association recommends outdoor lighting at night, particularly street lighting, to have a color temperature of no greater than 3,000. So that's the maximum. So I actually say less, but that's the threshold level. I say don't go beyond. The higher the color temperature, like instead of 3,000, 4,000 kelvins that we have, the greater the blue content and the whiter the light appears. So this is the spike. That's what it looks like for 4,000, the lights that we have in our communities. So that's a spike in the blue spectrum that we have. So at the top, this is the sine wave we had with an incandescent light bulb. So it's not a sodium light, it's the traditional light bulb. So you can see it's a sine wave, it's analog, it's on a flicker, and it's got a 6.6% flicker. Now, an LED exhibits sine wave flicker, which is at the bottom here, square wave flicker, which is 100, and with 100% flicker when connected to an AC source. Again, it doesn't have to be, often is quite pronounced. And the width, so you can see the height of the flicker, the wave, the pulse width modulation is quite a tall amplitude. Right. So this is a few of the news stories. Public Health England. I mean, it's a known issue. It's like government is not talking to one another. It's a bit of a game. Local authorities get maybe pushed to join the contract with a certain kind of lighting, which many local authorities pool into, and they go into a PFI contract, and they're locked in, and these contracts are brokered somewhere else centrally, and they just partake in it. So it's like the one hand is not talking to another. It's very mixed messages. Public Health England says it is a warning, yet the other parts of government push it. Right. Again, drivers survey, 89% of respondents said dazzle is mainly due to the fact that some headlights just appear brighter. So they think that 85% think the problem's getting worse. So this is an RAC survey, and that's why the RSA were very concerned, because their members had such high poll ratings of the problem of these lights. And this is another thing where you see road accidents, road fatalities increasing during the day and the night, but it's so much more pronounced at nighttime. Why is that? Okay, it's at night, so you can see less, but the rate of increase of the fatalities at night is far greater than in the daytime. So it's 86% rate of increase since 2010. So it's an 86% increase since 2010 at night, and a 31% in the day. So there's a real gap at the rate. The American Medical Association I mentioned earlier. So there's a lack of health assessment, health impact assessment prior to introducing the lights. There's no consultation according to the gunning principles. They don't even look at environmental impact, in terms of wildlife and energy consumption. And they're not open to giving us the information. They don't clearly state this. We have to really ask for it. And then they don't help you to put your views across. I mean, there's nothing, and then they don't help you to find a way to redress. The only way you can get redress is through the quality impact assessment, so that if you've got a medical condition and it's impacting your ability to deal with going out at night time, then you do have a chance, because that's the way they have replaced streetlights, not through you not liking it or you saying it's distracting or disturbing or uncomfortable. You have to have a medical condition which is backed up by a doctor or a medical professional. And then the council, not through the street lighting engineers, but their qualities officer, will fight your cause. And there's been many successes in that. So I did a next door poll, and I had a 67%, something like that, where people said yes, they would like the chance to feel in the real environment, because I won't jump to that point yet, sorry. In the real environment, they want to feel how a light is for them, and feed that back to council, and then have their decision acted upon. But when I got to that point, then the councillors and others backed off. And I would dearly love people to, in my local area or other people, I suppose it depends on people's communities at different locations. I'm in a suburb of London, and I don't think people are pretty. The community sense there is not what it could be compared to other parts of the country, I would say. And so I wasn't getting enough of a pushback, and I wasn't getting enough people coming together on it. So even though it's a very simple thing, a very simple concept, understandable. Let's just choose the lights we want and experience them beforehand and say what we want. And even our counselors, when we push this, look, we'll help you with the scientists, we'll help you design the trial. They from a point of, oh, this is great, we really need your help. I think there might be people are really upset about this, and I think there might be votes in this. They even said that. But when it came to the crunch, for some reason, I didn't get the backing. And what I thought was, if I get someone who's got an eye condition, again, backed up by a medical professional, then we can get somewhere. Maybe we could go with that track. Okay. So this is where I mentioned the successes they've had through going through their qualities officer. And I engaged in the council after being initially fobbed off. So I really need more pushback but I'm fortunate to have people who in the US and other parts of the UK who are specialists in this field and can help. But we need, the person in the UK, he's based in Dorset, he did get the council to change, not to change their lights, but any lights going forward would be 2,000, I think 700 kelvins, warmer lights, more diffused, but also not so bright that they sort of harm the ambience and over light where they live, people's properties. Okay. LED lights have another thing about them where they lend themselves to complex circuitry. It's easier to add complex circuitry, so you could have other components added to them. And LED lights can have there's different lighting in the standards. There's different lighting qualities or power of lights, P6 being the most powerful, P1 being least, I believe. And then you can add other things to that. Sorry, P6 being the least powerful, P1 being the most powerful. So P1 being the highest, P6 being the lowest. And then added to that, there's other additional things, other different lights. So you can add more horizontal directional lighting to enable facial recognition during nighttime. Other than that, you can add microphones, you can add many things. So this was done in a terminal in Newark Liberty International Airport, where 171 LED fixtures inside a terminal could listen into conversations over 300 meters away from the eavesdropper. So that's quite sensitive. And the other thing is we can talk about the environmental impact in terms of energy use by bringing in things that people don't talk about, like the Jevons paradox. Okay, so if they think the LEDs are now more prolific than sodium lights were, and LEDs are just plonked everywhere because you can just use little diodes, just stick them onto the walls, even even stick them onto Velcro now. It's so easy to do that even shops now are just keeping their lights on, some lights on. So then the Jevons paradox kicks in, where because of its cheapness, people use it more, and then you actually in aggregate use more energy than you would have otherwise, even though it might be cheaper initially to use the LEDs. But I've mentioned earlier that high pressure sodium lights and low pressure sodium lights have evolved to the point that they match, if not beat, LED lights as well, if we want properly implemented LED lights with enough modules. Okay, so this is an example of multifunction LED lights, so which can you emit Wi-Fi, other things. Okay, so that's that. What the councils also do is they don't understand what environmental zones are. So they say, well, environmental zones basically are for lighting, according to the British standards. They look at ambient light before any lights are there in a particular locality. So they want to light it so that it doesn't become intrusive from the baseline, which is natural seen without lights in a particular area at night. Whereas what the councils do, they say, well, it's misleading to use lights that meet environmental zone requirements, because it gives the impression that this is a low populated area with very few people, and it makes it a place look rural. well, this is a complete misreading of what they're meant to do. And according with the environmental zones and British standards and the Institute of Lighting Professionals guidance, you do not look at that, how populated an area is. You just look at the scene, whether it's a suburban street, whether it's a side street, and on that basis, what it was like before any lighting, and then be sympathetic with the lighting based on that. And you do that using a sky quality meter, an SQM it's called, and that's the internationally recognized way to do it. It's an objective measure. And I don't think, I mean, council don't do that. So Dorset Council was pulled up on this, and they had to concede, and therefore they had to amend. And although they're not changing previously installed lights, going forward they have to take account of the proper way of applying lights. Okay, so false statements are often used by our councils. I mean, I don't know. It's not, some of our council officials are probably not doing it cynically, and I think I caution against having an approach where they're the bad guys, you're the good guys, because they're already, I think when I approached them, even though I was quite mild in the way I approached them, they were already quite defensive, and that I think that prevents any progress. But then I don't know. I mean, because when I talk to my councillors, the presentation here, they go so far and no further, and that's why I need numbers. And they actually said to me, we need more people behind you, more numbers, and I'll do things. They were kind of encouraging me, but it's not happened. But I think this issue is one where you can get more numbers. I've not been able to be successful in that. Maybe you could be more in your area, and if you want to take it up, I'm happy to support you with information and go through it with you and point by point and back you up with information. I hope that was useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asif. That's brilliant. And then obviously we'll take some questions at the end because I know we're gonna
Sorry if I
move
was over time.
on. No, it's okay. Thank you so much. And I would strongly advise anybody who hasn't watched Asif's Incapacitator Streetlight presentation. I would strongly advise people to watch that because they are, from what I can see, they're being placed at the bottom of city centres, town centres, and I believe that they're doing that, deploying them in those specific locations solely because obviously they would want
Yes, they
to.
induce nausea and
Yeah,
unease. So basically, it's used in crowd control, and they're used
yeah.
sometimes handheld by police enforcement people in the US. They're used.
Yeah, and you can watch a little mini video on that by History. So if people don't believe this, the History did a very short documentary about this particular topic. And obviously, Asif, you did a fantastic presentation, which we've published on the National Residents Association YouTube, and as well as it's on the Telegram channel as well. So yeah, no, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So yeah, do a survey in your local area. Maybe if you're on Facebook or Nextdoor or whatever. What do you think to this idea of having one street given over to different kinds of lights, and then people can choose what they like and feed it back to the council? Or or does anyone have any medical issues related to these street lights, and then sort of help take it forward with them, things like that. And yeah, take it that way, and then I can provide you with information.
Thank you.